meeting being okay, that's good to know. Recorded and transcribed. What a deal. So we've got David Berger, who has come on screen. David will be explaining his role a little bit later, but he will essentially be keeping us on time and keeping us on track as we move forward, since we've got a large group. We also have Ann Birch, who will be monitoring the chat for me, letting me know anything that I need to know about in the moment. And other chats she'll save until we can talk about them at the end. And then we also have Kim Hector, who will be scrolling through the documents. Hi, Kim, for us, and we'll be presenting the information. And there's Ann, so we've got all four of us who will be your team today, who will be leading you through this process. Before we begin, some background information on doing a RAC, or a Rule Advisory Committee. Most of you have been with us before and will know this already, but a few of us will be new. And so we want to be able to explain to you what we're going to be doing today. Specifically, we look at all statutes that are passed, or bills that then are turned into statutes, and anything where the legislature says, okay, agency, you need to write a rule to implement this. That's what we look at specifically. And that's really why we're here today. So we've already got the statute, and we're going to be talking about it extensively near the second half of our meeting and going through it line by line so you can all understand it. But we're also looking all the time at what does the department do to try to implement and to write rules that will implement the statutory language. So that's what we're going to be doing today, or start talking about today. And the other two people I want to introduce before we begin, one of them is on the screen now, Naomi Sachs. Wave for the audience, Naomi, thank you. And she and Deb McCune, hello, Deb, will be leading us through some of the background materials that got us to this point. And because of their expertise, both with working with the coalition on an ongoing basis, and being involved at least with the drafting of initial legislation, I've asked them if they can be here today to try to provide that context as formal members of the RAC. So that's how we're going to begin. Okay, before we dive into looking at the rule, however, I'd like to look at the ground rules. And Kim, if you're able to pull those up, that would be great. If
Yep,
not,
hold on just a second.
Okay.
I had them right here.
No
hold
problem. And as she's pulling that up, one other piece to deal with rules. This rules process is a little unique because ground rules, great, we'll talk about that in just a minute. It's a little unique because we need to have a temporary rule, a rule in place by January 1st, something in place that talks about some of the legislative pieces that are required. That's a really quick timeline for the state to meet. So for that reason, we're going to be first having to do a temporary rule. And once you have a temp rule in place, which will be due by January 1st, thanks for bumping up the size there, Kim. Once that is in place, we then have 180 days to develop a permanent rule. Now, in truth, we didn't need to convene a RAC until we got to the permanent rule process. However, thinking and knowing that that's a very condensed process, I decided it would make sense to start with a RAC right now, so that we can get some information from you and some feedback, even as we develop the temp rule, and then hopefully this group will be able to continue as we go into permanent rulemaking. As we get closer to permanent rulemaking, I will need to finish one more step, which is the equity review step. And I didn't have to do it yet because you're a temporary RAC, technically at the moment. However, to ensure that we have all necessary players involved by the time we get to that permanent rulemaking process, That's why I will need to do that equity review before we get to January 1st, and probably really like in the next couple of weeks to get it done, so that we're ensuring we've got all necessary parties involved in this process. We'll talk more about that later, because I'll actually would ask you all to help me review it, but not today. Today we're going to do some other background pieces. One of them is what you see on your screen right now, which are the ground rules for this meeting. And we are asking you to be present. It always helps to actually be here. I know that this was a very short time frame to hold a RAC, and I really appreciate all of you making the effort to be here today. Please do take care of your own needs. If you need to get up and go use the restroom or pet the dog or grab some more coffee, do whatever you need to do so that you're comfortable as we move through the process. Do respect confidentiality. If you have information that should remain confidential, keep it that way, please, because this is a public process. It's open to the public. They'll be able to see the minutes and the transcription later. And so we don't want anything being mentioned that we really don't want out in the world as a whole. Please mute your mic unless you want to talk. Yeah, I know it's distracting when you hear the background sound, so we're going to ask that you try to remember to do that, to try to minimize those distractions. Please raise your virtual hand. And again, using my helpers as well as myself, we will call on you. So if you you have two ways actually to make comments. One is to raise your hand and participate, and we'll call on you to speak. The other is to put comments into the chat. And again, the chat is being monitored by Anne closely. So if you want to comment that way, it is also completely acceptable. You don't need to raise your hand and speak out loud unless you would like to. Please, if you do, put things in the chat, or if you're speaking, keep it professional. Again, that's public information, and it's information that therefore, if we are asked to provide it to a public entity or to an external partner, we will have to do that. So just keep that in mind. While the rule process is going on, we're asking that you, to the best of your ability, try to be okay with non-closure. I will today be getting a lot of your ideas, as will a lot of my colleagues on this call. We're going to take those away and really think about it and try to come back to the next meeting with pretty detailed draft document rules for you to review. But today in particular, there won't be any final decisions being made, and so I need you to be aware of that. Also, disagreements are part of a healthy discussion. When they occur, we ask participants to be respectful of others and courteous and respectful in the conversation. Virtual meeting etiquette, which just became really virtual. There we go. Please do check to make sure that your name and pronouns are correct. That's in both on your own email or your site, so that when you speak, we can see the correct name. Also, we're going to in a minute show you the list of participants. I've already learned that I apparently changed the organization. At least 2 people work in. So please do take a look at that as we're going through this document so that you can correct any inaccuracies. Please state your name before you speak. That will just help us all get used to knowing who's on this RAC. And that will certainly help me as your facilitator be able to get used to voices so that I know who's talking. So please do try to remember to give us your name when you start. Again, try to remember to mute your mic if you're not speaking. And to the best of your ability, try to be able to pay attention and be involved without other distractions. Also, we're asking that you please be respectful in the chat. It's not a place to poke other people or to argue. You can certainly say, I don't agree. I think that this is the real issue. That's fine. But we're asking that you keep it professional and civil in that discourse. Also, and this one was new to me last night, so let's see if I can explain it. Our monitor is David Berger. When you are speaking, we're asking everyone to keep your presentation, initially your comments, to 3 minutes. That does not mean that you only get 3 minutes in this meeting. It just means that when you're speaking, you'll be asked to keep it to 3 minutes. David will come on and tell you if you're going like at the 2.5 minute mark, so you know you have another 30 seconds to wrap up that comment. Now, This is the 3x3 rule, which was the piece that was new for me. After speaking, if you wish to provide additional spoken comments, please wait until at least 3 other people have already talked, or allow 3 minutes before speaking again. I expect that as your facilitator, I'm not going to have that much trouble keeping track of that. And I probably won't call on you like several times in a row if we have other people also wanting to talk. But that's the 3x3 rule. And so that's what I'm asking that you go ahead and please recognize and respect today. Kim, why don't you keep scrolling down first and then let's go back to the top. This is a glossary of terms that we just wanted. It's only 1 page, but yesterday both Ann and David were helping me getting ready for today's meeting, and we were trying to think of terms that not everyone on the group will know. One of them is the Real D language, and in an effort to increase and standardize the race, ethnicity, language, and disability data that's collected by ODHS, which is us, Oregon Department of Human Services, and the Oregon Health Authority, that's OHA. This bill was passed, I believe, in 2013 and was put into rule a while ago. So hopefully we, the department, are doing a good job of ensuring that we're asking questions that meet those standards. The SOGI rule or statute was passed just a couple of years ago. I think it was 2019. And we're just about to enter the process of writing rules for that language. And that language does its sexual orientation, gender identity, and then sometimes you'll see it with an E, which right now I'm not remembering what that stands for, but when you see it with an E, it just means it's additional data being collected by the department. Actually, I think it's gender expression information, isn't it? So it can be very specific, and it's more likely, I think, to be information collected by hospitals or maybe nursing facilities than it is by most of our facilities right now. Then we did put in the definition that's now coming from the new statute or the new law, LGBTQIA 2S+. That definition is in language that's in the bill. And it is a definition that we are going to require every facility to include in their own programs and policies, procedures at the facility level. So a heads up on that. Kim, please keep on scrolling down. All right, these are just acronyms specific to our department. I will try not to slip into acronym language because I know when I first got here about 8 years ago, that was the hardest part of the job, is trying to figure out just what people thought they were saying, because so many of us talk in acronyms inside this agency. But here are some acronyms that you will see and likely hear that I just wanted to spell out for you. And it's APD, it's Aging and People with Disabilities. It's one of the 5 large substantive programs here at Department of Human Services. This is the program that most of us on the call are part of. So Safety, Oversight, and Quality, which is my unit, is part of APD, which is a part of ODHS. So again, I apologize, but just because you're going to hear those acronyms, that might help to hear it. Within Safety, Oversight, and Quality, we have 3 specific programs. And for the purposes of our rulemaking, we're going to have to put the language into each of those 3 programs. The department, we do not keep at Safety, Oversight, and Quality a standard set of laws that apply to everyone. We require that that standard language be included in each one of the individual programs. And they are, in no particular order, Adult Foster Homes, or AFH. That's a facility type of 5 or fewer residents. We have them here in SOQ, Safety, Oversight, and Quality. You'll also see them in another program, Disability Services, and you'll see foster homes at Oregon Health Authority. So although they're each serving slightly different audiences and different groups of residents, it's still 5 or fewer, I think, across the board for each of those agencies and programs that have adult foster homes. NIF, or Nursing Facilities, that is a unit inside of Safety, Oversight, and Quality. Those are the only nursing facilities that are regulated by the state. That's part of our program, one of the 3. The third and final program is community-based care facilities. Now, just to give everyone a little tip, if you look for community-based care in statute, you will not find it. Instead, you'll find residential care facilities. And for our legal purposes, we combine our residential care and assisted living facilities, and internal to our program, we name all of them community-based care. So if you're seeing residential care facility in the statute, that really means both of these facility types captured under community-based care. LTSS is long-term services and supports. It's an office also within Aging and People with Disabilities. Naomi Sachs, who is a member of this RAC, serves in that program. Likewise, we have CSSU, which is Community Services and Supports Unit, a slightly different unit within Aging and People with Disabilities. And Deb McCune is the representative to the department from that office. Then we do have ODDS, Office of Developmental Disabilities. They are another of those 5 major programs within the department. They're not under Aging and People with Disabilities. They are their own office. But we do have members that are at least sitting in today, because in the near future, that program will also need to write its own rules. So we have welcomed them into this RAC so they can hopefully pick up information from us that will allow it to be a more consistent rulemaking process. And finally, the last acronym we included is OPA, Operation and Policy Analyst. That's what most of us on this call, from safety and oversight and quality, that's what we are. I'm an OPA. All my fellow participants who are helping today are OPAs. So if you hear that term, you're talking about that level of operator or employee. Kim, can you now go, please, to the top of the screen? All right. I have been listening to all of you emailing me since I sent out the original notice for this meeting. And we have tried, oh, that's what I did wrong. Thanks, Eugenia. That's what she meant. I have been taking everyone who said, yes, I want to serve as a member, and you are RAC members. And that includes all members of the coalition who want to be involved in this process. I am just naturally or automatically making you a full RAC member when you let me know you'd like to participate. We've got Fred Steele. I may not read the entire list, but Eugenia Liu is not with Oregon Healthcare Authority. It's OCA, so it's a different name, and I got it wrong. So there we go. Thank you. And the same for Nicolette. I decided to make them, Eugenia was pretty sweet. She goes, well, you've decided to promote us. So I'm not sure, but there we go. So they're now correct, and thank you very much, Kim, for fixing that. We're going to now scroll down this list. You also received a copy as an attachment, both in the meeting notification and as the separate email. I've learned through time to do it both ways. Hopefully that will allow everyone to have a copy. If you do, in looking at this, see I've misspelled your name or I've got the wrong organization designation, please do either put it in chat or just let us know. And if you can stop just right there for another minute, Kim, the last thing I do want to say is that I have asked each of the 3 programs, so we have to give me a representative who will serve on this RAC as members. And they are Jeremiah or Jay Adams is serving for nursing facilities. Vicky or Victoria Sarico is serving for community-based care. And Lynette Caldwell is the manager of our adult foster home unit. She is representing that program on the RAC. Okay, Kim, please keep scrolling. Now, thank you, and you can stop right there. We have lots of state agency people that I invite to every RAC. The reason is this. Although I'm asking these folks, and hopefully they all remember this, to not speak up unless I make a mistake, and then I do want to know. But because this group will be reviewing all the rules that we draft, and they will all be the ones implementing the rules. For that reason, I really invite and really appreciate having staff show up just to listen and learn And then I do meet with the programs following racks such as this to get their feedback, but I don't want to clutter up this meeting by sort of talking agency speak. So we'll bring anything back to the next rack or future racks that you need to know about what we're thinking as the agency. But for now, I've asked folks to please be here. And these are agency people and their names. So again, folks, go through the list and make sure that I didn't assign you to the wrong program or I spelled everything correctly, and let us know that. Are there any questions about this document in any way? Okay, hearing nothing, I think that the next thing we will do is dive into the presentations. I have temporarily misplaced my copy of the agenda. That's a problem. Let me find that. Actually, Kim, if you have the agenda ready at hand, you're usually so good at that, or David, and can put it up, that would be very nice. Otherwise, just give me another meeting or minute and I'll have it. All right, thank you. Oh, that's right. Thank you, David. Okay, it's coming back to me. One more step that I really did want to take right now is we have got a lot of you on this RAC, this Rule Advisory Committee, right? And a lot of folks who probably don't already know each other. So we really did want to get a sense just very quickly of who is here today. So David has built a quick survey and he's going to pop that into the chat. And we're going to ask that you all designate or click on whatever category best suits you. So it gives us all an idea of just who's here today and how many people represent different programs. So David, are you able to do that? Oh, he's already done it. I haven't pulled up the chat, so that's my problem. Got it. There we go. So please check on who are you representing today. Pick the category that's closest to who you're speaking for, and click on it, and it will automatically pop up at the bottom. I do, of course, expect a lot of people from regulatory agencies because, again, I've asked them to be here and observe because they will be the people helping to regulate this at the end. So who else do we have? What do we have? And everyone has hopefully submitted their vote.
Lynn?
Okay. Yes, Anne.
Yeah, there's a reminder in the chat that regarding the FEMA and FCC emergency alert system test at 11:20 today. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, good time to do that. Why not do it now? Yeah, this morning as I was sort of groggily waking up, I did hear on the news they're doing a FEMA test today for emergency response. So I think it's at 11:20 Pacific time. So we're probably all going to have a loud noise for a few minutes that will hit at 11:20. I just wanted you to know it won't be me messing up. It's actually something that's FEMA and that's required. Thank you for that reminder, Anne. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay. And it looks as if also Megan had put into the chat, and thank you, Megan, for this, the full list or designation for SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. So it's the expression piece that not all of our programs probably work with. That's going to be more of a hospital setting, which is why you will see SOGI sometimes with an E and SOGI sometimes without. But thank you for putting that in. I appreciate that. All right. So what have we got in our poll? Looks like 31 of us, or 73%, are with the agencies. Not a surprise there. And then we have 5 people, or 11%, that are with the advocacy groups for LGBTQIA2S+. Now, I know I invited more, so I don't know. Maybe people are identifying themselves as being with separate organizations. We do have long-term care provider associations. We're looking at only 2, but 4% of our audience. And then a long-term care provider advocacy organization. We've got 3 people on, 6%. We have private citizens. Only one. No, is that only one? Or no, zero. Okay. All right then. And then other, we've got 11 folks that are calling themselves other. I actually would be interested in knowing who you are. So if there's anyone willing to come off of mute who categorize themselves as other, that
And
would
just
be
a
great.
correction, Lynn, it's just one person, not 11, that were in that other
Oh,
category.
Thank you. Yes, my eyes aren't great, and I couldn't see that right. So the one person that categorized themselves, could you please come off and tell us who you are? Hi there.
Hi there. My name is Divine Jung. I'm a staff attorney at Legal Aid Services of Oregon. So we represent low-income Oregonians with various civil legal issues, and it didn't exactly fit within those categories, so that's why I put other.
Thank you, Divine. That makes sense. And hello again. Good to see you. So welcome. Glad to have you here. Okay. So with that, I was again going to explain a little bit about this rulemaking process. What we do is take the statute, and we'll be doing this later today. We look at it and say, okay, what pieces are we being required to just take and verbatim put into rule? And there's a lot of them in this statute. So that part's easier for us in that we're just going to take it and require facilities to then adopt that language. There are other pieces that are requiring us to think a little bit and to provide the parameters on the program. And we will need to be doing that as well. What I am expecting, just so you all know, is that we definitely will be able to put all of those mandatory pieces into the rules by January 1, which is the date of the emergency or the temporary rule. We have to have language in place by then. Then to the extent that we can work out some of those other pieces that are more discretionary for us, we will have those in that temporary rule as well. However, there may be some pieces that we cannot come to agreement on in the next couple of months. Those will need to get moved over to the permanent rulemaking process that will start in January. As soon as the temp is in place and filed and effective, you have 180 days from that date, which will be from January 1st, to complete the permanent rule. So it sounds like a lot of time, but there are a lot of steps that we have to do behind the scenes, as well as going with the RAC process. So we will be moving and trying to get through that information as quickly as we can. So those are the two rulemaking processes. Again, we're hoping to have all of you with us for this entire process. Are there any questions or comments at this point about anything we've discussed so far? And we've got Rayanne. Whoops, I just lost. Hello, I lost the chat. Rayanne Voorhees, I know, is a consultant and has just joined us as well. And somehow I have lost the entire group by opening that up. Unfortunately, they gave me a new laptop 2 days ago, and I haven't had a chance to reconfigure everything to be the way I like it, so I keep getting myself lost. I'm now back.
Lynn, I can go ahead and read that out if you'd like. I can read out
That'd be
what's in the
great. Yes,
chat.
please. Thanks, Ann.
Brianne has indicated that her name, and she's a long-term care provider and a registered nurse, actively involved in teaching the role of the CBC nurse and the ALF RCF administrators training through OCA. I am an approved RN admin consultant too. I look forward to collaborating and sharing insights as we continue to work together to serve our community members. Thanks for extending the invite.
Well, thank you, Rayanne, for joining us, because we have a group, I think, of 6 RN consultants that I always send RAC notices to. And this time you were the only one who was able to join us. Usually we have a group of you, but it's nice to have you, and it will be good to have your voice at the table. So I appreciate that. I wanted to ask another question. We normally only do one 15-minute break right in the middle of this. However, it was suggested that I at least ask you if you might want 2 breaks. And if so, would you like a break right now? If you would, please raise your hand if you would like a break. And if you're okay and you want us to continue with the next piece of the RAC, don't raise your hand. So if I see any hands, I know you want to break right now. I am not seeing any myself. So wonderful. We will just continue on then with the rack. The next item that we're going to do is I've asked if Naomi Sachs and Deb McEwen, as folks more familiar with the background on the bill and people who've really been involved with this topic for quite a bit of time on behalf of our agency and have spoken on this topic many times. They actually spoke to our safety oversight and quality program last week. It was a great talk. So I have asked if they can come today and give just a slightly shorter version, but don't worry about time. I want it to be a good presentation. And I see Deb, so please go right ahead and start. And Deb, let me ask you, would you like to run the slides yourself, or either one of you, or would you prefer that we ask Kim to do that for you? What is your preference?
I think that this is Naomi. I think that we were going to run the slides and I have them teed up, so I can go ahead and start sharing. I'm going to start us out. So let me get the slides up here. Can folks see them? Let me make it.
Not yet.
Make it. Okay.
Not yet. Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
There you go.
All right. There we go.
Okay.
Just needs to be in.
There we go.
Yep. There we go.
Okay. Great. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming today and participating in this really important process as we try to set up the framework for implementing the bill. We're just really thankful that so many people are involved in this process so that we can do the best job and really get this stood up and running. We thought that there might be some people in the group that are less familiar with the work to date. And so I am a policy analyst, a longtime policy analyst with Aging and People with Disabilities. And I've been involved in the work that led to that revealed some of the needs for the bill through a survey. And my colleague in this work is Deb McEwen. Deb, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody. Do you want an introduction, Naomi, as we go? Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you wanted to kind of share anything about your background. So what we're going to cover is just a really short little kind of primer on what led us to the bill. And back a few years ago, we were working and liaisoning with some community groups. I want to really call out the Oregon LGBTQ plus Older Adult Coalition, which was really instrumental in bringing a request to the agency for funding, to the governor and to the agency for funding, the first ever community needs survey of LGBTQIA2S plus older adults in Oregon. And that's what we're going to share with you today, the survey and some of the data that came out of it that really revealed the great need for a bill like SB 99. So this is a little colorful view of the survey report, which was published in September of 2021. And we're going to talk a lot about the survey, but every time we talk about the survey, we like to really start with acknowledgements of the many community advocates and community members that participated in the development of the survey, everything from the ask to have a survey and then participating throughout the process. And many of our key partners are listed here, everyone. As you can see, it was composed of groups that work with LGBTQIA2S plus older adults, but also groups that work with older adults in general, the Governor's Commission on Senior Services, HIV Alliance, some participation from a local church that supports the population, and many other key members that really provided a lot of great insight and continue to work with us today around making sure that the data is available and is being used and is being considered of, what kinds of responses can the agency do, can community providers do, can community members do to address the needs that were revealed in the survey, as well as some of the strengths that were revealed in the survey to make sure that those things keep going. So the background: in the spring of 2020, the community and the Governor's Commission on Senior Services identified that there was this lack of data, and it's very hard to make policy. There was a suspicion that there was a lot of need and that there were disparities in the services that people were receiving and that what they knew about and had access to. And so there was a request to fund a pilot study, and the agency turned that into funding for a full community needs assessment. The research was led, we contracted with Dr. Karen Fredrickson Goldson of the University of Washington and her research team, along with a community-led Oregon Survey Advisory Committee that worked with Karen's group on every aspect of the survey, from who should participate, what should the content be, very instrumental in the outreach about the survey, and then in talking about the results and working with us today to address the needs and that were found in the survey. So a couple of other things about the survey. This was a statewide survey. It was offered online, in writing, by telephone. It was translated into 10 languages. The goal of the survey was to understand the risks, the needs, and the strengths of diverse LGBTQIA2S plus Oregonians age 55 and older, and especially including those that were not represented in previous studies. And we had a very great participation across racial and ethnic. The percentages of the participants were higher than the Oregon population, except for the Latinx population, which was a little bit lower, which we were disappointed that we didn't get a little more participation there. Also of note, there were 1,402 participants. When we started this, Dr. Goldson said to us, well, we need at least, several hundred to make sure that the results are going to be, we're going to be able to do the analysis. So I think, the entire, her team and frankly us as well, we were really astonished at the response. And that's really thanks to all those community partners that really got the word out. The survey's out there. Please take it. It's really important that we have data on the population. So that was very successful. We also, just in terms of the demographics, we had a good representation from people of different gender identities. So we had 17% of people identified as transgender and 85% as cisgender. And then we had, in terms of rural and urban, we did have more participation from urban areas, but we had about 17% that identified as living in or 18% as either rural or frontier areas. The research report was open, the survey was open for 3 months, and then the results were analyzed by Dr. Goldson's research team and released in September of 2021. So key findings. We're going to share with you a few of the key findings from the survey that most closely relate and really drove the recognition of the need for a bill like SB 99. So there are many findings, and we have some links to the survey. If you're not familiar with it, we can share these slides after and make sure that everyone has access to the executive summary and to the research report itself. But key findings that directly relate to this work: more than 50% of participants said they had service needs that were not met. 24% of people said they had experienced elder abuse in the last year, and 3/4 of them did not report that experience of abuse. Common barriers were distrust of authorities and a lack of knowledge about how to report. So having this Bill of Rights and knowing that there will be agency oversight and monitoring is really vital to addressing safety and abuse concerns, and hopefully reducing the incidents through the bill's provisions. You've noticed on a couple of these slides, we have some quotations on the left-hand side, and those are things that people who took the survey, there were opportunities for them to make comments, and those comments are reflected, those quotations are on a few of our slides because they really show that personal experience of what was found, what the overall findings represent. I'm going to cover one more slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to Deb to cover more. But another key finding was about mental health issues. And 21% of people that took the survey said that they had suicidal ideation just within the past year, which is quite significantly higher than the general population of Oregon and the population of older adults nationwide. The national averages that were released, so this is national, not by state, but in 2020 for age 50 plus, the national average for the statistic was 2.7%. And here we are at 21%. Across the survey findings, there were wide disparities among racial and ethnic groups, with people of color experiencing significantly more, more need and adverse experiences, higher percentages of adverse experiences for people of color, and the greatest elevated risk for suicidal ideation, as you can see here, are the Black African Americans, Asian Pacific Islanders, and Native Americans and Native Alaskan Natives. So our next slide is about more on those adverse experiences, and I'm going to turn it over to Deb to pick it up and share more.
Thank you, Naomi. I'm going to share one other number in terms of the suicidal ideation and risk. Folks who live in our frontier and rural areas are at an elevated risk as well, even higher than that 21%. So just putting that out there, that we need to keep that in mind, that there are also rural urban differences, and we need to be mindful of folks who are living in rural and urban areas too, because for many of these numbers and statistics that we're showing you, there are higher elevated risks among that group. So in terms of other adverse experiences that were noted in the survey, participants are experiencing many of the participants are experiencing housing, economic, and other kinds of insecurity. So you can see that 40% of the folks who responded live at or below 200% of the poverty level. Folks also have difficulty paying their bills, buying nutritious meals, etc. So there's a level of economic insecurity. And almost 2/3 of the folks were not confident that they would be able to continue living in their current housing. It's also of note here, as Naomi has talked about with some of the other statistics, that participants who are people of the survey who are people of color also have higher rates of economic insecurity, housing and financial instability, and unemployment. Next. So this is one of the findings here around discrimination that really is a huge driver for a lot of the work that we're doing, and also for reasons why the passage of SB 99 is so important. And that what the survey found is that nearly 60%, very close to 60% of the participants had experienced discrimination within the last year. And while that wasn't surprising to me in any case, that a level of discrimination exists, the number was really quite high. Discrimination for folks who participated in this survey crosses boundaries, crosses activities. So it's common in public spaces, in employment, in housing, and in health services. So was reported to be experienced by folks in home and residential settings. So the kinds of settings that we're going to be talking about, and as we go through this rulemaking process in this bill. 21%, so clearly a fifth of those who are currently living in a residential setting reported discrimination in housing. Also, as we've said before, rates of discrimination are higher for folks who are people of color. So there's an increase based upon race, and there are also challenges within the healthcare system. So a number that's not on here is that 18%. So again, nearly a fifth of those participants who reported that they used health medical or health services reported discrimination in those services. We also have urban and rural differences in this as well. Next, thank you. Okay. Switching gears, those last few slides there were findings, top findings. There is much more data in the report, and again, we'll share this out so you can have a link to that report for anyone who hasn't seen it. Much data there. But given so much data was obtained from this survey, it was really important for us to try to prioritize what we needed to work on or what we should be working on in terms of actions and action plans from the department, what we needed to be prioritizing to work on first. And so after the survey was concluded and the results had been shared and we'd all had a little bit of time to look at them and try to digest that information, we went out to community and held a number of listening sessions. I believe there were 7 or 8. Some of them were, for specific demographic groups, racial groups. Some were open to anyone who wanted to give us their thoughts, but we had a number of those. And what we heard from community was that these were the top priorities in order. And under health and mental health care, that's really where there was a lot of conversation around long-term services, particularly residential services, housing, that sort of thing. So that's part of the reason why we're here today. So let's go on to the next one. We also heard across those sessions, that listening, some basic themes came across regardless of the topic area, and safety was always very high, is always an area of concern. People in this community fear for their safety, have had their safety needs violated, and so it's really important that we take that in consideration as we're looking at these protections for folks in our care settings. You'll see that come across in a couple of different places, including safe spaces for social support and safe spaces to connect with people. So these themes came across. There are access barriers, discrimination is in the mix here too. So just wanted to share those with you for that perspective. So what's been happening on our end after the survey? We've talked about this a bit here and there this morning. Naomi and I have done presentations on the survey findings, some short like this and some long. Almost always when we're doing presentations to community groups or potentially at conferences, that sort of thing, we've asked in our survey, members of our survey advisory committee and other advocates, some of whom are on this call today, have joined us to share their perspective and to give information about this survey, the data, and what it means to them. So our community members, advocates, and organizations have been involved with us throughout this time. But we've given quite a number of presentations on these findings, including some legislative presentations. We've continued to be involved with community and advocates, both in terms of those listening sessions and then, excuse me, I've had a cold lately, ongoing with groups and organizations and involvement in hearing feedback from folks. We've been working on an action plan, and this is specific to APD to be able to implement some actions to address what the needs and the gaps that were found in the survey. We've been involving community. Most of the work to date has been internal, but we're certainly partnering with our community organizations and advocates, and we'll be working more deeply on finalizing an action plan within the next couple of months, we hope. And then also, whoops, one
Deb?
more. Yeah,
Hey, Deb, sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
I should have asked you. I have a question in the chat. Can I call
Yes.
that out for you now?
Yes. Let me just one last thing, because I was getting
Sorry,
ready to wrap up. Also, we've been working on the implementation of SB 99, which is taking us to right now. And now I think we were going to open it up for questions. So go ahead, Ann.
You have an inquiry wondering if the community articulated how the political climate in the last few years has impacted their feelings of safety and inclusion. That's a great question.
Yeah.
And Liz James has raised their hand and is ready to speak after you, Deb.
Okay, great. And Liz can add to the answer. Yes, we absolutely have heard from community about the political climate. I'm sure that had an impact in the conversations as SB 99 was making its way through the legislature. But it's to be honest with you, it's a disappointing and scary time when there are so many bills being proposed across the state and in Oregon that are discriminatory, and I'll just leave it at that. I'll just leave it at discriminatory. But yes, we have absolutely heard about it. And Liz, you can add to that or give another comment or question. I'm not sure which you have.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all the work that's been done on this. I'm Liz James. I am actually the chair of the Oregon LGBTQ plus Aging Coalition, very involved as a coalition in the survey and also in the bill work. This is a particular topic that touches me. I happen to be 68 years old. I've been out since I was 18. And people that are older than me older LGBTQ adults have been through different types of trauma in their life. Many have been arrested. I've been in bars that have been raided. I've been chased and beat up. So when we're looking at legislation, keep in mind that marriage inclusion is a pretty recent bill in 2015, and that's being threatened to be taken away. So there is this whole re-traumatization that is happening. It's happening to all age groups, but I think it can be particularly pronounced to older adults. So thank you for the question. I think it's really important to keep in mind. I did, Deb and Naomi, if you don't mind, the survey also really reflected that people who identify as transgender are disproportionately impacted pretty much throughout all of those categories. So I think it's really important that be noted. So thanks again.
Yes, thank you, Liz. And it is that's an important point. Thank you for bringing it up too, about differences in experiences for people who are older and levels of discrimination and trauma that they have lived through in their lifetime may not be quite the same. I'm not diminishing anyone's experience at all, but they may not be quite the same as folks who are younger at this time. So I think there is another hand. I'm not sure who it is.
There was only one. We're
okay.
Done. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments?
It looks like Lynn was talking, but Lynn, you're on mute.
I can't figure out how to get off of mute.
You're off now.
You're back on.
Well, you were.
Okay, this is changing. Yes. Suddenly okay, I'm hearing myself duplicate. Is there anyone else who has comments they would like to offer or questions? And I will say, as a state agency representative who has literally safety as the first word in the title of my program, that when I was hearing Naomi and Debbie last week, I kind of got a little sick to my stomach. I mean, I know these are issues, and for a number of reasons, I have lots of people in my life who have dealt with issues such as this, but it was so discouraging to realize how high the percentages are, particularly with the older adult community. So at least I'm very excited about the opportunity to work on the issue and recognizing this really does need to happen. Any other questions or comments?
All right, thank you, Lynn. So,
Yeah.
Naomi, you can get the final word, but we will be, as Lynn said, participating in this RAC. Will be available. We can answer other questions. We'll also be sharing links to where you can find the survey report and other data with you as well. So thank you for your interest, and thank you for being here and participating in this RAC. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Any final comments or questions? It doesn't have to actually be a question about this topic or the discussion, but anything that anyone would like to offer at this time. Try muting your computer. I did that. That's when you lost me. I'm going to try it again. So we'll figure that out. Luckily, we're coming up on a break right now because I clearly needed to play with my phone, figure out what's going on. But again, I want to thank all of you for being here. Let's take a 15-minute break. So starting at 10:05 and then going to 10:20. And if everyone can come back and be with us at 10:20, we will start going through the bill. And just so you can get a heads up of what's coming attractions, I'm going to walk through and briefly describe each section of the bill. I've also put in some language or ideas of what the state or my department might want to start to write, but I really want to know what you want to have in that language. So look forward to seeing you all at 20 after. Thank you.